Well, it looks like it's about 6 o'clock, so we'll get started so we'll have our short business meeting first, then we will eat, and then Melissa will have the program. If you want to stay around, that'd be great.
The program will not be that long.
We'll call the meeting to order and welcome to the November 2023 meeting of the Houston County Historical Society. If you will please silence your phones. And the sign-in sheet is going around. If you would sign in there too, please. We will begin with the pledge to the flag by Miss Elizabeth Martin. Hold it forward. I'm going to do it. Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The minutes from the October meeting, was there any problem with them? Everybody get a copy?
All that legal mumbo jumbo that I had to go through to put in the minutes. Yep. I can tell which ones read the minutes, and I can tell which ones didn't. If y'all remember, the guy last month was talking about cemetery law,
Yes.
and he had a lot of lingo stuff that I had.
See if Dan.
Yeah.
agrees with it.
Oh, well.
That makes me agree.
Yeah.
Are there any corrections or questions on the minutes? Okay, we will deem those as approved. Treasurer's report, Ms. Leah.
The only income we had, well, besides interest, was Melissa sold some of the books that were donated.
The Meacham family had donated a bunch of cookbooks, and we already had copies of them. So that's why some of you, I brought her to the meeting last month, and some of you bought some of them. I was just trying to get rid of them, so.
We made $80, and we went ahead and put that money in our artifacts account allocation, which now has $138 in it for Melissa and others if they find things to purchase. We've got, at the end of the month, we have $1,940.51 in our checking account. And the CD is the same at $10,595.26.
Do you have any other?
Make a motion, we approve as
Second.
presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. New business. I got a call from Miss Betsy Ligon wanting to know if we wanted to sponsor some hounds for the Chamber of Commerce again this year. We sponsored 2 last year. They are $45 per hound. And is there any discussion or motion or
I'll make a motion, we do 2 hams.
Second.
all approved?
Aye.
Okay.
These will be given away that first Friday where they do the vendors, which is going to be at the fairgrounds this year because they're still refurbishing the city hall. And then they're going to come back up here that night at 5 o'clock to do the tree lighting. And they're going to give away hams there as well.
And you have to be present.
You have to be present to win.
Okay. Our December meeting will be food and fellowship, and we may save the program for April, if that's okay with Kay. Food, fellowship, membership. It'll be a 6 o'clock meeting. The society will furnish the turkey, dressing, rolls, and cranberry sauce. So if you will bring something to go with that, we plan on having that at the Erin Methodist Fellowship Hall, where we've been meeting. The nominating committee has checked with all of the officers and board of directors, and they have agreed to serve for next year. Thanks to Jackie for her nominating committee assignment. And is there any discussion on that, or?
Make a motion, we make acclamation.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, they will be sworn in January, if we can get Joey on our program. I'm sure we can. January will be our state of the county. February will be show and tell because of the weather possibilities. March, we will be honoring or helping to support the Irish celebration. So that's as far as we've got. If you have a program you would like to present, or if you know of a program, we would be glad to put you on the agenda. We have January, February, March, and we meet with Stewart County this time, or they meet with us?
We go to them in June.
In June, okay. So we've got January, February, March, June, and November taken care of. So, and I'd like to have a board of directors meeting in January at 6 o'clock to work on the agenda for the 2024 year. Old business, still have the maps for sale. If you got your minutes, it will tell you what we have. Don't know the number of each, but we still have prints, maps, and books for sale. So, that's it. Does anybody else have anything they want to discuss? Okay. Well, we will adjourn for this meeting unless there's anything else you all can think of we need to talk about, and start our eating. And then we'll come back in here around 7, and Melissa will present the program. So, thank you all. And okay, who would like to say a prayer for the food? Bless the food. Dr. Martin, would you say a prayer, please?
Let's pray. Lord, thank you for a good day. Thank you for this group of men and women who have a common interest in the history of this county. And Lord, help us to remember your blessings to the county and to our nation and to each of us. Bless our food and our conversation, and help us to enjoy this evening. Help us to honor you in all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And I would encourage everybody to get a piece of cake. I don't want that cake left over.
Made by our one and only Katie.
Yeah, my daughter, Katie Cakes, who has her own business, made the cake, so it's chocolate cake. Yeah. It's not meat cake.
I can eat chocolate.
I know.
That's a food group, isn't it?
It's a
It
food.
is. It's my favorite food.
That's right, that's right. Pieces of information. Alan?
She mentioned the thing of the Knickerbocker Theater.
Yes.
You're familiar with it? It had 2 entrances. One was on one street and the other was on the
And
other.
this was
street.
in Nashville, right?
5th and 6th
Yeah.
in Nashville. When I was a kid growing up in Dawson, my friend Roby and I would catch a bus, come to town. And we had a system. I would go to one entrance and say, I need to check, see if my brother's in there. I would go in and check and go out the other door, other entrance, and say, I'll be back in a few minutes. And we could go to the movie free. And then finally, there was a fellow, he kind of caught on to it. And he said, now, you're gonna come back through this door. I said, well, I don't know. And that ended it. Because when you went in one door and came out the other, you were okay, but if you had to go back in the same door, you couldn't do it.
Wow. So while we were, everybody's finishing up eating, I thought that would be a great thing to do, is to listen to that. So I'm really eager to get a lot of our other cassette tapes, VHS tapes, and our DVDs digitized, and they'll be available on our Patreon computer. And we'll try to let everyone know which ones we get done. So if you want to come listen to them, you're welcome to. I have kicked around either getting with Donald or setting up our own YouTube channel to put them out there. Because, you know, we're not all going to be here forever. And so getting it out there in the, whatever you want to call it, airwaves, maybe it'll be preserved. And so, but I just loved it. The first one I picked as a kind of an experiment. My husband is actually doing the digitization because he used to be in radio. He's got his own kind of home radio station a little bit. So he did pretty good on it, and I was very, very fascinated to listen to this one. And that's when I just grabbed it out of the box and said, oh, so it was a perfect one. So we did have one for George Bateman, a cassette tape, and you can't understand anything he's saying. It is so bad. The tape itself must not have recorded properly or something, because you can't understand any of it. It's from 1986. Come on in. Come on in. Join the party.
I think I'll enjoy it from right here. I've got to go back upstairs. We had a couple of long-winded presentations. So,
Okay, would you tell everybody to come get some food?
I told everybody, I said, I got to go.
All right, okay. Before I do my short presentation, it's kind of short. Give you an archives update, I like to do that. And I went back from the time of our last meeting to see what had happened since then. We've had a lot happen, actually. We've actually had 2 families that have been consistently bringing us records, which we're very grateful. The first family is the Meacham family. I think I mentioned them at the last meeting, but they brought more. Carrie Meacham is Joe and Joanne Meacham's son. I think that's their only child. Is that their only child? He keeps bringing me stuff and saying, I think this is it. And then he'll come a couple of days later and he'll bring me some more. And so I think this is it. And he says, we still got to go through the attic. So, but this time he brought, if you look at down here, if you can see it, the butter churn. He brought that. Pick it up.
Yeah.
Easy. There you go. That is a Louisville Stonewall Pottery Indian Head 3-gallon butter churn. And then he also brought the coffee grinder that's on the floor down here. That makes our 3rd coffee grinder. We have this one that came from the Schmidt-Barnes family, and then we have one from the McKinnon family that's out in the display case that's in the hallway. And now we have 3.
All different styles.
So, yeah, so that's wonderful. This one here, you know, they turned everything into lamps. This one's been turned into a lamp. Once electricity came along, they turned everything into lamps. They brought us, Carrie brought scrapbooks, a couple of scrapbooks. And one thing you brought that was interesting, that's kind of rare, I would say, is Joe Meacham's scorebooks from when he was coach for the girls' basketball team. So he brought about 6 of those, and they date from 70 to 73. So we already have a good collection from the Roby family and from Elsie Baggett of scorebooks. These things just aren't saved. You know, after a game, they may be saved for a little while, but they usually are thrown away. So we have those. The other family, which has been very, very prolific in bringing us stuff, is the Boone family. So how many of you here are related to the Boone family? They were a pretty big family in Houston County. Miss Lorraine Boone and her father, Sidney Boone, which her name was actually Sidney Lorraine Boone. The Boone family owned a house in Paris, and they owned a house over here on Maple Street. And one day, I guess it's been a month yet?
Something like that.
Jeff Boone walks into the archives and he says, "Is this the museum?" And I said, "Yes." And I introduced myself. And he introduced himself. His name is Jeff Boone. He is the son of Darwin Boone. And Darwin Boone is the son of Lorraine Boone. And he proceeded to tell me that they were cleaning out this house in Paris and selling it, and that they had some records, and that he had found my flyer on the internet, which I'm very grateful. And he said, "We have some things we'd like to donate." I said, "Oh, great." He brings in 10 boxes. And I'm not talking about just like, sometimes we get donations of stuff and it's like stuff we already have or copies of stuff we have. This is all original records that has been in the house since Miss Lorraine passed away, sitting there. So he brought the boxes in. He says that this kind of stuff, and he was very excited, very much into history, which I was very glad about. And he told me that he has some more that he's taking to his father in Wisconsin, who's still alive. He's in his 80s, for him to go through. So I went through all the records that he brought, and I could not list everything to tell you, but there's photographs, documents, scrapbooks. I was telling Miss Polly, the Boone family house must have been a very popular house, because I have 3 guest books, where when you went to their house, you got to sign a guest book when you went in. And I have it packed away because we have this tonight. But Miss Polly is in those guest books. She has signed those guest books multiple times. But on one occasion, she put Polly Fazell, age 11 years. So I'll show you that one day when we don't have it packed away. So people from Nashville, people from other states, people from government, local people. And they would either sign their name with a little message, sign their name with an address. So we have 3 of those books that I'm really looking forward to looking at. Then, some of you may or may not have knew Miss Lorraine. For a period of time, she worked as a secretary for the FBI in Washington, D.C. Did any of you know that? They knew her. Okay. Within her records, I have records from that time. I have the government used to, when they did pictures, they were always the 8x10 glossy. And so I have several of those from the 1930s and 40s where she went to dinners in Washington, D.C. She was part of the Secretarial Association there, and so there was programs and records and all kinds of neat stuff. She also taught school at the Tennessee School for the Blind in Nashville. I don't know if you knew that. And so there are some records in there from that time period. There's a whole, I don't know how to explain this, there's a whole collection of poems, prose, essays from the 20s and the 1930s that I haven't figured out yet what's the story behind it. I've been talking to Jeff, her grandson, about it. He seems to think that it came from her time at the School for the Blind in Nashville. It could be from when she went to college at Vanderbilt in the 1920s, because on some of these prose, it's got a cover page on it that says, "Please return to Professor somebody at Vanderbilt University." So I have some friends in the archives there. I'm going to show those to them. So then I get an email from Jeff saying, "Dad's gone through this stuff, and I'm going to bring you probably 6 more boxes." So we're very, very blessed that these families have chosen to deposit their records here. Brenda Lewis is not here, but Brenda Lewis is wonderful about bringing us things. She brought us some textbooks, a couple of wonderful textbooks, and a newspaper article about the Brake family, who were, I understand, singers or entertained. So she brought us that. So that's the update on the archives. Some of you who haven't been here in a while, you can see some of the things that we have on display. I got this today. I showed this to Dr. Martin. He could not figure out what it was. I got this today. What do you think it is? I thought it was a landmine. Well, what you do, it opens up. Alan, you know what it is?
I think I do.
So you open it up. You put stuff, what do you put in it?
Hot water.
Hot water. And then what do you do with it?
Put it under a pillow or under.
I was gonna say it's a bed warmer.
Yes, keep your feet warm. So this, I got this today. I actually purchased this from the New to You thrift store. If you don't go to that thrift store, I would encourage you to go there. So I got that because I wanted it, maybe it's not from here, but I wanted something, as you can see on display, to show us what it was like. So I'm going to do my program. It's going to be kind of short. I want you to enjoy the food, enjoy the museum. But I really wanted to celebrate the Historical Society's 40th anniversary. This year makes 40 years that our group has been together. And I hope we have another 40 years. November the 10th, 1983 is when the Houston County Historical Society was born. And I'll also add that tomorrow, November the 15th, will be the Houston County Archives' 13th birthday. That was the night, 13 years ago, that the County Commission voted us to be an archive. So that's another one we could celebrate. So in the Historical Society records, we have all of their records, and I found this little history. I don't know who wrote it, so as I'm reading it, some of you who are in this room were there at the time. I'm not going to point pictures or point fingers. But if you can tell who wrote it, because it's not signed. So I thought I would read this for you. On November 10th, 1983, a group of persons interested in the preservation of Houston County history met in the Erin Community Services Building. Was that the old gym?
City Hall.
Is that City Hall? Okay, they call it Erin Community Services Building. to discuss plans to form a permanent historical society. Those in attendance were Beverly Price, Ellen Price, Lorraine Robin, which was Lorraine Boone, Faye Mitchum, O.S. Uffelman, George H. Bateman, Dr. Joe Morgan, Susan Bell, Judy Black, and Irene Rokas. Dr. Wallace Cross, a scholar in residence with the Tennessee Committee for the Humanities, chaired the meeting, outlined ideas and objectives which might be considered for future projects for the society. Accompanying Mr. Cross was his assistant and secretary, Mr. Kent Brown. Tilden Richardson, Irene Rokas, and O.S. Uffelman attended a meeting of the Stewart County Historical Society on November 22nd, 1983. They received a copy of their bylaws and constitution, which was later followed in drafting similar documents for Houston County. A second pre-organizational meeting was held in Houston County on December 12, 1983. Copies of proposed constitution and bylaws were distributed. O.S. Uffelman was elected temporary chairman and Irene Rokas temporary secretary. A nominations committee was appointed. The Houston County Historical Society was organized on January the 30th, 1984 at a meeting held in the Houston County High School Library. The following officers and directors were elected: President O.S. Uffelman, Vice President Dr. Joe Morgan, Secretary and Treasurer Susan Bell, Directors Irene Rokas, Vernon Mobley, George H. Bateman, Willard Allsbrooks, Tilden Richardson, Mary Evelyn Dixon, and Nina Finley. According to Irene Rokas, the following persons were issued receipts for paying dues as charter members of the society: Tilden and Billy Richardson, Joe Morgan, James T. and Irene Rokas, O.S. and Helen Uffelman, Lorraine Robin, Kent and Susan Bell, Vernon and Faye Mobley, Hugh and Mary Evelyn Dixon, George Bateman, Nina Finley, Randall and Kay French, Ruth Mitchum, Faye Mitchum, William Elbert Beard, Patrick Allen, Linda Rye, Mr. and Mrs. Mike Davis, Mrs. John E. Sexton, Mr. and Mrs. A. Elliott, Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Boone, William Dressler, Lorraine Allsbrooks Moss, Walter Batson, and this last one I can't pronounce, Patricia Kostunis, something like that. I don't know who she was. So that is the little history that someone in the past has put together. And also in our records, they talked about bylaws and documents. So we have our own founding documents, just like the United States has our founding documents. Well, our historical society has founding documents. So what do we have? We have our bylaws. These are the original bylaws. You're welcome to look at them. They've been changed since then. They've been updated since then, but this is the original bylaws. We received an official charter with the state of Tennessee. So we have the official charter. And we have our Constitution. It is 2 pages. This is the original Constitution. And to be honest with you, since I've been in the Historical Society, I don't remember us ever talking about the Constitution, but we have one. And here is a little newspaper article about the founding of our society, if you want to read it. And then a list of the charter members who paid their dues at their first meeting and became charter members. Now, when I looked at this with Leah earlier today, we were trying to figure out which ones were still living, and I only came up with 4. Helen Uffelman, Kent Bell, Kay French, Randall French, and I think that's it when I look at this list.
You say Faye Mobley?
Is Faye Mobley still living? Okay, Faye Mobley, that's 5. I think that's it. I mean, Linda Rye, does anybody know Linda Rye? She's still
Yeah,
6,
she's still
we got
alive.
6. I don't know about a Mrs. John Sexton. I don't even know who she, don't you love it when they say Mrs. John Sexton, you know who they are? I know that the, OS is gone, the Rokuses are gone, Richardsons are gone. But anyway, so this is our list of, we can thank them for what we have today in our historical society. You know, many of our historical societies are dying off. and closing. You know, during pandemic, I heard about a lot of societies that just closed their doors and said, we're not gonna do this anymore. And so I'm very grateful to each one of you that has kept this going, because I've been in meetings the last couple of days with these men who are looking to do some good things for our county with grant money. And in the meetings, they ask, what do you want to see done? And of course, I'm a voice for history, for preserving our history, for advertising our history, for telling people to come see our history. And I'll always do that, but you all do the same thing. And so I'm really, really grateful for that. So, what kind of accomplishments have the Historical Society made? I couldn't list them all, I couldn't go over them all, but if you think about it, we've been a society for 40 years and they have published at least 6 books in those 40 years. There's some societies that don't publish one. So the original history book, which was published in 1989, they published the Danville, Tennessee book, Gone But Not Forgotten, which was published in 1993. The Houston County History book, which was published in 1995. I'm sorry, the cemetery book was in 89, not the history book. The pictorial history book that we have was published in 2001, which we still have copies of. And the other cemetery, they did a World War II Years Remembered, that book. It was published in 2002. And then the last book that we published was our cemetery book, which was published in 2004. And we have copies of the pictorial history book and the cemetery book still available. And more recently, I would say our accomplishments have been the World War I program, the World War II program, and the updated cemetery map. Those were very, very large projects that the Historical Society, all done by volunteers, accomplished more recently. And so, Kate, stand up. You're one here that has been here since the beginning.
Stand up?
Stand
I don't know
up.
that I'm able anymore. I feel very old right now.
So thank you for being there. You know, without them, we wouldn't have Historical Society.
I want you to know how that came to be, because
Yes.
Dr. Wally Cross came to me at the library, which was in the room at City Hall, and his job was through this, remember Homecoming '86?
Oh,
when
yeah.
we had to prepare for the big 200th anniversary of the state of Tennessee. They wanted to put records and et cetera in the county so that people didn't have to just come to Nashville, to their archives to find things. So his job through Austin Peay and through this particular government program was to identify what each library had in their facilities. And ours, of course, original Tennessee, Houston County history was slim and none. And he said, is there anything that you would like to have that you all don't have? And I said, well, there are a lot of us, we've always wanted to have a historical society, but we never can get it started. We've been trying. And he said, well, if you'll call people and get them to come, then I'll be glad to help you get organized. So between Dr. Cross and I, we got the bunch together, and we met at City Hall because of that room back there in the back, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And then they were gonna meet at night. I could go to them when they were meeting at night, but then when they were gonna meet in the daytime, I couldn't go because I was at the library. So, but anyway, that's how it got started. If it hadn't been for that program in 1986, I don't know when we would have ever, if ever, we would have gotten it organized, because he just was there to drill it in until we got it done. And probably that's why we have a constitution. It's because I'm sure he said you need one, so.
Well, I just think that, you know, I think it's interesting to look at history, because, you know, we look at our ancestors, and I was just talking to someone the other day about how many of our ancestors and people in our families were the ones who did certain things. And when they pass on, those certain things stopped happening. An example of that was several years ago, I went to my cousin's wedding in Ohio. And it was where my dad and my mom had grown up. And so one of the days we were there, my dad took me and my brother in the car and we started driving around. He was showing us his school and different places where he lived, where my mom lived, and how he had to walk all these miles to go see my mom and that kind of stuff. We started to pass this one house and he said, that was Grandma Wise's house. My grandmother had married again, her last name was Wise. And then he said this, he said, and that's where the family reunions were held. And I looked at him and I said, what family reunions? And he knew I'd been doing genealogy research for years. I said, what family reunions? And he said, we had a family reunion every single year. I said, well, first of all, why haven't you told me about it? But second of all, what happened? Why did you stop having them? Because Grandma Wise died. There's always one in our families that makes sure something's done. And so that was something in my family that I never even knew that happened. Well, we all have something to offer, but I'm going to stand here and say that Kay French has done a lot more than most. She was there when the Historical Society was born. She was there when the Houston County Archives was born. I will say, without Ann Hagler and Kay French, we would not have an archives to take care of our records. And when we started the archives, we started in the room across the hall, and in that room was where all of the stuff that the Historical Society had collected and gathered since 1983, along with 6 desks, 20 chairs, and everything else. And yes, I dragged 6 desks out of that office, that one office. So after a little while, we started the archives. I went to the Historical Society and I said, how about giving us what you have so it can be protected and stuff. So I was very grateful that that happened. But they collected it first. I mean, if they had to just put it in that room, which was great to just collect it. When Miss Evelyn Ellis was talking about giving stuff to the Historical Society, I have seen that stuff that she's given to the Historical Society. It's still there. We still have it. We still have her ration book that she gave. So the Historical Society is very important in our community. Our numbers may be smaller than what they have been in the past, but I'm just thankful for each one of you that are dedicated and come to the meetings and support this endeavor that has been going on for 40 years. Yes, Deborah?
Well, and the Houston County Historical Society could not have done that without the support and the knowledge from our county historians.
Yes, yes. We've had several of those over the years, and there's plaques up on the wall. And we have 2 of our historians, we have co-historians, Donald Bateman and Kay French. See, she's in everything. And then one of our another, before her was Bob McKinnon. We have George Bateman that runs in the family. Tell me another one. Charles Lovelady, Nina Finley. Are those all of them?
And Nina was so proud of the fact that someday she was going to have a plaque when she died.
And she does.
Because she would never let us do anything for her.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I'm going to have a plaque when I die. And I do hope it's up there. I really do.
It is. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I shouldn't say this on camera, but there was a mistake on hers when we did it, I think, if I remember right, we had to redo it. So I have the mistake one in the archives.
Oh, okay.
So she has 2 plaques.
That makes her happy.
Alan?
I've always been interested in this, and my grandfather on the McCampbell side was a great for sitting, when I was a little, talking to me about relatives, so-and-so. And then I met my brother-in-law, Anetta's husband. Russ was a great historian. And I could tear up when it's unbelievable what he discovered. He discovered that his grandfather on one side and his grandfather on the other side were in the Civil War. And one was a guard in the prison, and the other one was a prisoner. Now you think about that.
Wow.
You know, but anyway,
Very small world.
when you talk to him, it oozed.
Yeah.
And I've always been interested in my family, and I do a lot. And I do a lot online, okay? But if you don't know where you come from, and you don't care where you came from, it doesn't matter. But if it does matter, you want to know. And that's what you have.
Yeah, I want to say that, it just, I wasn't scheduled to be here tonight, but no, thank you for the invite, because the information about the Boone family, well, the story that my grandmother Frizzell was just so humble about, in that it was when Granddaddy Frizzell died quite young, and she still had the 5 children to raise and a fairly sizable debt on the farm that down at Crossroads. The house is there where Deerfield Inn is. And so after the funeral and everything settled down a little bit, she said, you know, I just see no way of really keeping it there. And Mr. Sid Boone, he was a real mover and shaker within the Erin community and the banking community. And so it was after about 3 months of Granddaddy's death, he came to grandmother and said, Miss Frizzell, I know with your faith and those hardworking kids that you have, said, I've got it worked out to where you just pay interest only for 2 years.
Wow.
So that really was the way of that. And the older ones continued high school and then got jobs. And my dad dropped out of school, and somebody in Erin signed a note for Team of Mules. They were building Highway 13. And that was a way that could have steady income coming in and still put out a crop. But, you know, that's a real example of good, and where capital can be that. I just had a brief encounter on a trip that I took this past few months there, that I shared with the feedback from Dr. Joe Morgan's son, who was on that. He's just retired from teaching civil engineering at Auburn. And so I didn't know who he was in there till I saw the name tag, and I said, how did your dad find Erin of the place? He said, well, that was one of the special spots in his life. He really cherished that community there.
Well, he did a lot for us too. He did. And you know, it's no secret that I'm not from here. I've lived here for 35 years, and so when people come in the Archives and Museum, they start asking me questions. Of course, I start finding Kay French's phone number and Donna Bateman's phone number. But I learn something every single day. And I get to look at records that are just absolutely amazing records, and photographs. Just recently, we had, within the Boone family records, we have a photograph of the hotel, the Central Hotel, that I've never seen before, and I don't think anybody's seen before, because it's at the back side of the hotel. As they were tearing it down, we believe it was at that same time when they were in 1953 when they were tearing it down. But we only see the front side. Is it out? The pictures that we have of the hotel is just the front side. And this picture is kind of taken from the side where you can see the back side. So it's things like that. There's a picture we have of Senator, I can never say his name right, Kefauver, that we got, that we couldn't figure out where this photograph was taken. Well, we have figured out that it was taken inside the Erin Depot. We don't have any pictures of inside the Erin Depot, so that's fantastic. I've done research on the Houston College. I ran across that because a guy contacted me and said, do you have any information on the Houston College? I'm like, what's that? He had his great-grandmother's diploma from the Houston College from 1893. He ended up donating it to us, but that sent me on a journey, and I'm still researching Houston College. I cannot figure out what happened to it. I'm looking for the records. Where did the records go? Because there had to be records. I've narrowed it down to something happened to it between about 1903 and 1911, because we believe that the Roby House was built about 1911. I've searched newspapers. I can't find where it burned or they just closed it down. I can trace it from its first pickaxe in the ground where they started building up until a certain point. I have lots of documentation. I have the original charter from the state of Tennessee and who all was involved in that. But I'm looking for the records. But we don't have any photographs of inside the Central Hotel. That hotel was there for over 100, well, for about 100 years, 1856 to about 1953. We have no pictures of the inside of the hotel. Surely someone took a picture of the inside of the hotel. So that's why I tell people who have photographs from here, when you're looking at your photographs, a lot of times what happens is that you're looking at the people. And that's great. But start looking at what's behind the people. Are there buildings behind them? There may be a building that we don't know about, or a building we don't have a photograph of. And so I'm actually doing a digitization project right now for the, well, Becky Gooden is the girl that brought them to me. Her grandfather's Hugh Breeden. These photographs belong to Ruby, is it Ruby Walker Lewis or Ruby Lewis Walker? I can't remember which one. Walker Lewis, okay. And it's a whole box of pictures that have just been thrown in a box. And she says, we're not going to donate them, but you can digitize them. So I've been digitizing them. No names on hardly any of them. So while we're grateful to have the photographs, this is another digitization project right here.
Another little,
Yeah.
saying that, our picture was made there after my oldest brother was killed on the farm accident there. I don't guess we'd ever had a picture of the children there. And this was a photographer from Clarksville that,
You mean it's a hotel? Oh, okay.
it did not show the hotel,
Yeah.
but it was Jamie, Sue, myself, just before Sam came along. But I can remember getting really dressed up in whatever the best clothes we had and having the picture made there
Wow.
with a visiting photographer.
Yeah. A lot of times if you have those visiting photographers, they bring their own backdrops. So you wouldn't get, you know, the inside of the hotel. We did get a photo album from Barbara Whitaker. What's her, is it Knight? Barbara Knight Whitaker. Her grandmother, the Boone, who owned the hotel before it was torn down, they bought it in about 1921, and they found this photo album that dates to the late 1800s, early 1900s, in the hotel, had been left in there. And when you go through there, again, there's no names on the photographs, but there are some local errant photographers. E.E. Collison is on there as one of them. I can't think of the other one's name. Anyway, that are on the photographs. So we have that photo album that came out of the Central Hotel, but it was just something that had been left there. And they'd kept it all these years, and finally Barbara just said, we'll give it to you for the archives, so.
This is the documented the hotel was moved?
Yes.
Okay, by
I
FEMA
have,
moved?
yes, I have the newspaper article. I wonder sometimes about newspapers, Christie, I'm sorry.
Pulled by FEMA moves over next to Meriwether Lewis.
Yeah.
Meriwether Lewis.
They moved
It wasn't a
it.
team, it was just
It was one.
Just one
It says
mule.
one mule
Oh.
and a winch.
Okay.
And then it also goes on to talk about that the people inside the hotel having lunch
Yeah.
at the time nothing moved while they were having lunch as they were moving the hotel. I find it a little difficult if people were eating while you were moving the hotel, but maybe.
I always heard they ate breakfast at one place and ate supper at the other.
The newspaper article says that the people who were eating lunch while they were moving the hotel did not see a thing move.
The information I'm telling y'all, Miss Nina Finley, it's in her little book.
Yeah, yeah, I got the newspaper article that talks about that, but, yeah, and then there's also articles about the Central Hotel where a little girl fell to her death from the top story.
Granddaughter.
That's where they housed the yellow fever patients, was in the Central Hotel, but that was 1878. There's lots of newspaper articles about that. But, yeah, I've got lots of newspaper articles about the Central Hotel and things that have happened. They're advertisements, but no pictures of the inside of the hotel. So that's one of my things I'm looking for.
Kind of interesting that the hotel had 3 floors.
Yep.
I don't think there's anywhere in Houston County that has anything that has 3 floors in it.
Yeah,
The Houston College had 3 floors.
Okay.
So that would have been at the same time that it was.
And that's located roughly where old Paul's Pizza is, am I right?
At, what, the Central Hotel?
The Central Hotel?
Well, that's where it was originally, and then it was moved to where, the Maryland Lewis or Purdue
Yeah.
Acoustics is now.
It's the blank lot beside what we call there where
Yeah.
It's the blank
Yeah.
lot.
It was facing Main Street though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not Purdue,
Not
Perigo.
Here we go.
There you go, there you go.
Here we go.
And I heard that the mule died.
Well, if you had to move that big hotel, did you die? I think that, it said in the newspaper article it was moved 700 feet.
On
So,
rolling pins.
it said a winch. So I
I
don't know.
always
if
heard it was
winch.
rolling pins.
Yeah.
Well, they would've used a winch too, probably.
Yeah, I heard they just split up
Hey,
trees
Leah,
up underneath.
turn around there
where
and
the
pull
road.
our Central Hotel phone. And there's the newspaper, Central, that one, they go through that one. Yeah, I can pull that real quickly and tell you if we do that. Let's see.
Boy, that's big.
I do have, I mean, this is not about the Central Hotel, but we can talk about it. This is Grand Hop, compliments of Mr. and Mrs., looks like G.T. Abernathy Jr. You are respectfully solicited to attend a Grand Hop to be given at the Central Hotel Wednesday evening, May 26th at 8 o'clock. Floor managers are Thomas Mahoney, M. Ryan, M. Woodson, and E.W. Rosher. Committee of invitation is Dudley Mitchell, J.T. Berge, J.L. Thomas, and A.H. Abernathy. This is from 1880, and this is an original. But I was just going to tell you about what they said in the newspaper.
A.H. Abernathy,
Yeah.
Alfred Harrison. He was on the Selective Service Board
Oh, yeah.
for World War I.
Okay, that's not 1052. I'm trying to find the one that's from. The Central Hotel, one of the oldest structures in Houston County, is being raised. This is back, but it tells you about when it was moved. The building is being wrecked by Adams Construction, local contractors. The building was constructed in 1856 by L&N Railroad Company, long before Houston County was organized. It was a 3-story building with spacious dining room facilities. The second and third floors were used for guests. The Mahoney family were the first to operate this hotel. They were pioneer railroad people and came here from Ohio. They were followed by the Partridge family, who came to Erin from Massachusetts, and were also railroaders of long standing. The Central Hotel was the oldest and best known between Bowling Green and Memphis. Think about that. The old building has some very pleasant as well as sad memories attached to its history. Many years ago, Mrs. Partridge sent her 8-year-old daughter Jenny to the 3rd floor to lower some windows on account of an approaching storm. In attempting to perform her task, she became overbalanced and fell to her death on the pavement. After the death of Mr. Partridge, his widow, Mrs. M.A. Partridge, continued to operate with the assistance of her brother-in-law, Lafe, L-A-F-E, Partridge, and Miss Jenny Carlisle. All the judges, both Chancery and Circuit, such as Chancellors Gribble and Stone, circuit judges, and they named the judges, registered there, as did attorney generals and many preeminent lawyers. The late W.J. Bryan, of one of his campaigns for president, spoke from the porch of this building. For many years it was
Jennings Bryan.
Wow, big name.
William Jennings Bryan.
Yeah.
Brian.
Jennings Bryan.
Brian, not Bryant, but Brian.
Not Brian, Brian.
Yes, he was running for president. Let's see, for many years it was the social center of Erin, as the young people were privileged to clear the dining room and use it for any type of entertainment that they desired. As floor wax was almost unknown at the time, they used cornmeal to prepare the floor for dancing. Few are the people who now live that remember those activities. As Sidney Boone, a lifelong resident, expressed it, the participants have passed over the river and are resting in the shade of the tree. The building originally stood where Leslie Roby's store now stands, and the wood, coal, cow, and hog departments were where the Erin Theater is now located. Edward Partridge Jr. is the only survivor of the Partridge family who lives in Alabama. The railroad company sold the building to Mrs. M.M. Boone and Miss Laura Boone, who had it moved to the present site. The moving was done with an 800-pound mule that was hired from Dick Weaver and a machine called a winch. It was moved a distance of 700 feet without the interruption of the serving of a single meal or injury to the labor. The lot on which the building stands is desirable, and a modern structure will probably be erected more in the near future. So that's what it said in 1953 when they were fixing to tear it down. So, but that's all I have. Mainly, we're just come on. You're still making.
It's
Okay.
about over,
Okay.
maybe a couple minutes.
Well, we're just wrapping up so everybody can get some food. Poor things. But I just wanted to, for my program for this November, because of us starting this in 1983, and also the anniversary tomorrow for the archives, to celebrate us who are on the forefront of saving our history. So thank you very much for all that you do. Have you got any questions? Yes.
I've got a tip of the day.
Uh-oh, here it comes.
My son now works for the Secretary of State's office and is a lawyer there. And he, they run the state archives and library. That's part of the Secretary of State's duties. And in that area where the new the building's only about 2 years old, and it's a beautiful building, state of the art. I won't go into all those things, but they have. If you go get a book there, the robot goes and finds the book for you and brings it back. But which I can't kind of imagine it. But if you go to Nashville, you need a place to park. If you will go by the library, you can get a card to the State Library and Archives for free. And if you've got a card, you can park in the basement, which is, that location is very near the State Museum. It's near the Sounds baseball stadium and the farmer's market. And parking is not easy to find, because I searched for some
There's
reason.
150 parking spaces in that basement parking lot. If you have
And
a
it's all,
card-
right now, it's all free.
Yep.
So, and it kind of ties
Yeah.
the, we have a great, Kay probably already knew that. She just hadn't told us about that.
I have my card. Got my card, and so I can go park in that parking lot, but I go to the.
Parking
You haven't
in
been-
Nashville is very
Yes,
expensive,
it is.
everywhere.
I would encourage everyone to go there because it's a beautiful building. It's very interactive, but, and ask for a tour. They will take you and show you that robot. It's one of 2 in the South, United States, that's in operation, I think. Yes.
I just, a different topic altogether, but if anyone here has personal memories of or has information about the old Houston County High School baseball field, which is up on College Street, across the road from Carl Perigo's body shop, I'd just be interested to talk to you sometime and get more information about it.
Yeah, it was about a half a mile past the school.
Yep, had to walk up there to play. Yeah, but I just, anyone that knows about that or has memories of it.
Or any
I'd like to know.
pictures of it.
Yeah.
I'll look at we have a file on Houston County High School baseball, and I'll look to see, again, I think I may even have a couple that are old enough to be there, but it's not identified as there, but I'll look and get back with you on it.
Great.
Now, please check your attics, your basements, and your garages and your closets, and if you don't want to donate it, let us digitize it, at least we can, capture it that way. So, I don't have anything else, Deborah, if you want to close us out. And the meeting is closing, so if you all would not take your food, let some of the ones come down and maybe get some food, that would be great.
Shall adjourn.
Always enjoy